Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining this evening. We're really excited for this session taken by Karthik, who is basically just going to run us through the basics of Flutter. But before we hand over to him, we are just going to introduce ourselves. So my name is Rose Templeton. I am a second year software engineering student, and the Google developer technology that I am most interested in is Google Cloud Armor.
Hi everyone, my name is Michael Downey. I'm the DSC lead. I'm a final year BIT student, and the technology I'm most interested in is web and Firebase.
Hi everyone, my name is Peter Davison. I'm a second year computer science student here at Queen's, and my favourite is TensorFlow.
Hi there, my name is Jack. I'm a third year computer science student and currently on placement, and my favourite technology is web.
Thanks for the introduction, Rose and the team. So a quick bit about me. I make apps. I have been for the last 5-ish years. I started with Java for Android, moved on to React Native for both platforms, and then ended up with Flutter. I'm also a semi-professional photographer. I study at the University of Southampton and I'm constantly drowning in work. I'm also the lead for GDG Southampton. So that's enough about me. Let's get started with Flutter. So Flutter is Google's UI toolkit, used by tons of companies around the world. Some include the ones in the top left corner, BMW, eBay, Square, Sonos, they all use Flutter. The reasons they would use Flutter, I'll describe in a bit, but the challenges of the current development methods are, if you end up using a native approach, you have high performance and high quality, but you have 2 teams and 2 code bases and different feature sets for each code base. Whereas the cross-platform approach ends up having fast development, a single code base, a consistent feature set, but it doesn't feel as good and it ends up being low performance. Well, where does Flutter fit in? Flutter's the best of both. Flutter combines native performance and quality with high velocity development and multi-platform reach. And that basically means that it's great at everything. Native performance means that it performs as if it was a native app. It's high quality, and you end up being able to code really quickly and for multiple platforms, not just Android and iOS, but soon to come, Windows, macOS, web. I'll be demonstrating with web today, but it's the same code base, which means that you don't need to change any code between them. So how does Flutter work under the hood? You have widgets and material and Cupertino widgets. Material widgets are widgets provided by the material guidelines, and Cupertino widgets are widgets provided by the iOS design guidelines, but you are completely free to make your own. It's all built on top of the Skia 2D engine, which is the same engine that Chrome uses. And it's all built on C++, which means that it's super fast. Because of how Flutter works, it basically paints each individual pixel on the screen, which means you have the full flexibility. So flexibility and expressivity is the 2 key words with Flutter. You're able to create designs and UIs that you would previously not have been able to or struggled with. And you never end up having to say no to your designer. You can also stand out in the app market because your app just looks so amazing. Here are some companies that have made apps and are using them right now with Flutter. This includes Alibaba, Google AdWords, Birch Finance, Hamilton Musical. So let's get started with code. So if everyone's got everything set up, they should be able to create a new Flutter application. I'm going to be using Android Studio today, but you can feel free to use VS Code or any other text editor you like. Awesome. So let's start off by creating a new Flutter application. You create a Flutter name, you can't use capital letters or spaces, but this is it's not what's going to show up on the device, basically. So I'm going to call mine DSC QUB World. Make sure you have the Flutter SDK part set and choose the location that you want the project to go into. You don't need to provide a description, but it's up to you if you want to do that. Now, if I just hit finish, this is going to take a second. Hopefully shouldn't take too long. Can everyone still hear me fine? Read the chat. Yeah? Cool. Oh, there we go. Awesome. So if I just pop this to the side, stretch this out a bit. Here's what a new Flutter app looks like, and you're probably like, what the hell is this? Well, don't worry, I'm gonna break it down for you. So while we're just looking at the basic code, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna open up a Chrome tab so that I can get Flutter working on Chrome. And this will take a second, just for it to open. So if we start off by collapsing everything, the code's still here, it just collapsed. So we have the void main function, and the main function basically, just zoom in, lets you call my app. And my app is a class that we can see here, which extends a stateless widget. As I said before, everything in Flutter is created using widgets. Everything you see on screen is a widget. Everything that you see, and any interaction is interaction with a widget. Oh, okay. This is what Chrome. That's Chrome, and this is Android Studio. So if we just open up this, we can see that we have a build function. This function basically says to Flutter, I want to give you a widget that we want to render on screen. And in this case, it's going to be the entire application. It's going to be the entry point for the whole app. If we look through this very quickly, we can see it has a couple of parameters. These are called named parameters in Dart. And if you control hover over it, you can see it's got a string title. And because it's surrounded by curly brackets, it's optional. So I can actually change this to something. If I can spell, and you can see up here that the Chrome tab has changed. This isn't the title that's going to be showing up on the user's device either. That's in the manifest files and the I can't remember what it is for iOS, but it's somewhere. You can search that up. It's not too difficult. You have a theme parameter and a home parameter. So this is what you get when you first run your Flutter application. And you can see that it's just a basic button that says increment, and you have a bit of text, and you have the number of times you click the button. But I don't want to just read through the code, so I'm going to just get rid of that very quickly. And I'm going to get rid of this as well, and we can build it together. Start off by creating a homepage. Using Android Studio or VS Code plugins, you can type in STFUL or STLESS for stateless and stateful widgets. I'll explain what they are in a minute. Let's start off with the stateless class. It builds out most of the code for us, so we don't need to do anything too advanced. Let's call this home page. And as you can see, the error we had before has disappeared. So if I were to run this, I can run it by saving it, and it will just update instantly. It's pretty boring, nothing's there. It's just got a container. A container is kind of like a div for all of those web developers out there. We can provide a color. Let's say colors.blue. And as you can see, it fills up the whole page with the blue boring background. But what happens if we wanted to make this more of an app and put content in there, basically? You can create this thing called a scaffold, and a scaffold is going to be on every page. Scaffold allows you to have certain things like drawers or bottom navigation bars, tons of things. And if you hit Control Space or Command Space on Android Studio, you can see all of the parameters. Also, because Flutter is completely open, you can control click into the code, and there you go. this is all code that I haven't written, but Google has, or the open source community has. And you can see all of the initial values. For example, here we have an initial value. Yeah, so we open up a scaffold, and this gives us a couple of parameters. Let's work with the body for the moment. Inside the body, let's say we want a bit of text. We want it to say, I've pressed the button n number of times. It's complaining because it doesn't know what n is. And this sort of syntax is called string interpolation. And Dart has string interpolation. So you can just pluck variables into strings and they will just print out as if they were strings. So yeah, if I just save this, I press the button 0 number of times. It's pretty boring. Let's style the text real quick. So if you put style in, it takes a text decoration, I believe. No, sorry, text style. And the text style has a couple of parameters. It has a color, so let's make it an indigo. It has font weight. Make it bold. And it has font size. So if I save this, and it works. There you go. We've got some nicer looking text. Now you're probably wondering where the hell I'm getting all of these values from. Or if you control hover over any parameter, you can see the type. It's of type color. And through experience, I just know that you can use colors, the colors class, and get a couple of colors out of it. It is just a list of colors. So, right, what can we do to make this more interesting? Let's center the text. If you're using Android Studio, you can do Alt-Enter or Option-Enter, I think, and wrap it inside the center widget. Now, if I save it, it's in the center of the screen. But it's still a bit boring. There's nothing happening, nothing's changing. Let's add in a button. Awesome. So we've currently used a body parameter, but what other parameters are there? If you scroll through, you notice we've got a floating action button. And according to Google guidelines, the floating action button is a small button that lives in the bottom right corner of your screen. And you saw it earlier when we first opened up the app. Let's create a floating action button. Now, you could use a normal floating action button, but it's got another constructor called extended. And as you can see, it's already complaining. It's like, I need a label and I need an onPressed parameter. So label, and if I don't know what the type is of the label, I can just control hover and it says that it's a widget. So I can pass in a text widget. Click me. And we don't need to style the text inside a floating action button because the floating action button has a specific style. We can also provide the onPressed. This is what you call an anonymous function. And it basically says, I'm providing a function without a header. If there was parameters, I could provide parameters in here without specifying that type either. But there's no parameters. And you can tell because it takes a function without parameters. Now here we want to increment n so that the text will update. Now, one other thing we can add is an icon. And this also takes a widget, and we can do icons.add. Now, if I save this, we get a small floating action button, as you can tell. But wait, why isn't the text updating? Well, the reason is, well, let's check if n is actually updating. say then, not sure if you can see too well. So n is updating, as you can tell here, because I'm printing n, but it's not updating the text. And the reason is because, well, you need to tell Flutter that this widget will update during its own runtime. Not through parameters, but just by itself, it will update. And the way to do that is to mark it as a stateful widget. In Android Studio, if you create a stateless widget and then convert to a stateful widget, you can just tap on that and it will convert it to a stateful widget by itself. For those of you that are using a text editor, you can type in stful and then type on the page and just copy over the build function and the variable n. So now if we run it, we can still see that nothing's changing, but n is still increasing. That's because we've told Flutter that the widget might update, but we haven't actually asked it to update. The way we ask it to update is by calling setState. You can call setState and provide another anonymous function. This is where all of the changes that need to be made happen. So put any changes to any variables inside here. And now, hopefully, there we go. We've got working text that changes. So this was pretty easy. What about if we wanted to do things like animations? Animation seems like a daunting subject to come across in Java or in React Native. But let's have a look. Inside this, what I'll do is I will just take this body and paste it above in a comment so that it's still in the GitHub file. I'll publish the GitHub file after. Okay. So we want to make an animated widget. Well, let's start with the container. We want a container that has a color based on whether n is even or not. So let's check if n is even. There's a small way of checking if any number is even. Okay. And if it's even, we want it to be indigo. Otherwise we want it to be, let's say, pink. This is going to blind me because it's going to take up the whole page. But hopefully, if this works, there you go. I mean, of course, this isn't animated and it's pretty boring, but at least it's changing. Now, you're probably wondering, how the heck do I animate a container like this? Or do I need to LUT between the two colors, linearly interpolate? Well, Flutter has this concept called implicit animations. And you can use animated and then whatever. You can use animated positioned, opacity, align, builder. There's tons of things to go on. But here, let's use animated container. The only thing that it requires is a duration value. And we can provide a duration by using a duration object. And let's say we want it to run for 500 milliseconds. Hopefully, if we save this, and there you go. We've got a nice, slow, linearly interpolating container. But how far can we take this? Well, we can do what we want with it, basically. Let's say, for example, we wanted to change the margin based on whether n is even. Well, if margin is even, let's use 50. Otherwise, let's use 100. Okay. All I'm doing here is saying if n is even, make the margin 50. If n is odd, make the margin 100. Let's do this. There you go. But that's still pretty boring. Let's make it a bit better. We can add in curves. using the curves class. And let's do bounce out because that has the most character. And look at how easy that was. That's all we need to do to make a really simple animated container. And of course we can add more and more to this, but let's look at something a bit more viable. How about we create a list? Well, we can use this thing called a list view builder. And a list view builder basically lets us create lists. If we look here, the required argument is item builder. And inside here, we need to provide a widget. Let's say, for example, we return a container. Obviously, oh, sorry, comments. Nothing's going to be here, but it's also going to create an infinite list. I might have broken it. I feel like I've broken it. Yeah, I've definitely broken it. Let's give it color. And item count is how many items it should show. So if we just pop in 10 for the moment. Okay, I've definitely broken it. Let's give this a quick refresh. Right, okay, it doesn't like me. Let's just restart Chrome. I don't think this should break it. I think Chrome is just being a bit buggy. Of course, I'm not 100% sure about this, but I'm pretty sure web is still in beta. It's not out for master. Okay, there's a good chance this code actually broke it. Let's put it. Oh wait, no. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, exactly. Work. Okay, so let's give it height and width because right now it's collapsed and there's no height or width. So now it's just going a bit crazy. But this is an infinite list. You can't really see the scrolling, but let's put in a bit of padding. Just very quickly, what I did there was Alt-Enter and then wrap with padding. And that basically creates this parameter. And here you can change whatever you want. Hopefully. There you go. We've got a list of 10 items. And now let's make this n, because we want n items. And we want this container. So currently n is 0. Now if I hit plus, we can see that we're dynamically adding to a list. And there's so many ways we can do this. How about we put the number inside the container? Child, and we want a text that says index. We're getting the value index from the item builder. There's multiple ways of creating a list. If you use the normal list view, you can't really tell here, but you can basically either provide a list of children or you can dynamically generate the list of the children as you go, which is what I'm doing here. If I look at this, there's more than one way of creating it. So if I go here, we want the text to be white. So text style colors dot white. Yes. It'll look great, but okay, there we go. We have the number in really tiny text in the top left corner. Font size, let's make this 25. Font weight, and let's make this bold. Awesome. So now that should look a bit nicer. Let me just collapse this. There you go. Let's center this because it doesn't look very nice on the top right. Cool. And now you've got a list with, if I add items to it, and well, dynamically changing. You're basically creating a list based on the number of times you've clicked the button. And the cool thing about Flutter is that the majority of the code is created for you. So Flutter was started off with being Android and iOS. But as you can see, this is working completely fine in web. And if I was to run this on my emulator, I won't do because my emulator's funky. It will work the same, which is pretty awesome. I believe they have given us support for macOS as well. I think that's in beta. And Windows is in alpha. So probably best not to create release applications for Windows using Flutter yet. Okay, what can we do to make this a bit more interesting? Well, let's neaten these up. We don't like sharp corners. Let's make them round, and let's add a shadow as well. So inside the container, you see that we provided the color. Let's get rid of the color and give us a decoration object. You see here we have decoration. Decoration. And we can do colors dot blue. Border radius dot circular. And box shadow takes a list of box shadows, so I'm just gonna in a list of box shadows. It only has one element. Colors dot black dot width opacity 0.15. And what else does it take? It takes blur radius and offset. I'm gonna say spread radius as 5.0. And let's see how this looks. It might look like the worst thing in the world. I haven't tested this yet. Oh, that doesn't look great. The box shadow looks a bit weird. Let's make this 2.0. Can also provide an offset, but I'm not gonna. Blur radius takes in an int. So we make this 5.0. Control Alt L. And then check this. There you go. Awesome. So that was how you would create like a really basic application in Flutter. But what about if you wanted to create something that your designer's given you? Oh, not sure what that is. So I've got this design here from Dribble, and let's say I wanted to create this. Let's do that. We have enough time. Yeah. Okay. So inside the project, I'm just gonna click on this drop down. And you can see tons of files, but you don't actually need to worry about the majority of these files. You just need to look at lib. The lib file folder contains all of your code and all of the code that makes the app work. So create a new Dart file, and let's call this bottom nav bar. And let's make this stateless because we don't need state for a nav bar. Bottom nav. And let's just import the basic libraries required to build it. Awesome. So if you look at this, we've got a row of elements, 5 elements: a house, a wallet, a plus button, a $sign, and a account. I'm going to assume account. So how would we go about making this? Let's start by putting it inside a container, and let's create a row. This row is going to have a list of children, which is going to take widgets, a list of widgets, as you can tell there. So what are the widgets going to be? Oh, sorry. What are the widgets going to be? Oh, it's going to be an icon class, because we want icons spaced out evenly. So let's create this. Icons.add. And make sure to import the material library if you want to use the icons class, otherwise it won't work. Awesome. So you have this, but this is just one item, and it doesn't have any interactivity. So let's give it a gesture detector. Awesome. So what a gesture detector does is it gives you a couple of functions that wraps around just a child, such as on tap, on double tap, on force press. It's got a ton of functions that I tend not to use, but like on tap is the one that's most used. So on tap, we want to call a function saying that we've tapped it, and we want to send it back to the main file. So let's take in a parameter. We want to take in a function that we're going to call tap. And this is going to be an int. There you go. Now constructor, and then there you go. Awesome. So this is what a constructor would look like in Dart. You have a bottom navbar which matches the name of the class, and you have the variable that you want to pass in. You don't need to type it because it's implicitly typing the parameter. So here in the on tap, we want to say on tap, we want to call the on tap function. Yeah. And we want to pass in 0. So that should work. Now, if I just collapse this so that I can just copy it very quickly. Control C. So if you look here, we have, it's basically just copying the same thing. So the second icon was a wallet. So let's look at wallet. And if you look through the list, none of these wallets look right. You can see the icons on the right. Let's click on account balance, because that looks a bit better. And let's one here. This is going to be add. This is going to be change this to 2, change this to 3. This was the dollar sign. What's the dollar sign? Money. I think it's money. Yeah. And also do the same for this. Dot pattern. Cool. If I save this, nothing's going to happen because we haven't actually called the bottom navbar inside the main file. So to do this, I'm just going to collapse everything and open up the build function again. Okay. So inside the scaffold, we have a bottom navigation bar. And here we can pass in bottom nav bar, which is from our own file. So we need to provide an on-tap function, which I can do by providing an anonymous function. And here we can say n equals I, and set state. This inside the set state. And all this does is basically says every time you click on an icon, it will assign that value to n. Okay, if I just run this. You have those icons just in the bottom left corner and it looks really ugly. So let's make this look a bit nicer. If you look inside the row, you've got the main axis alignment. And this basically says the main axis for the row is going to be horizontal and the main axis for the column, column is another widget. So I can do this. It won't look, you know what, for the fun of it, let's just see what it looks like in a column. Yeah, it's going to get a bit confused. So let's keep it as row and implement main axis alignment. So it takes in a main axis alignment object. So dot, and then we have space evenly, center, end, space around, and space between. So let's do space evenly. Now what you should be able to see, hopefully, is that they've spread out. But it still doesn't look as nice as this, does it? Well, what about if we give it a bit of padding and a bit of margin as well? So inside this container, we can provide padding, edge, insets, or actually, let's make it symmetrical. We don't worry about the sides. We just want to make it vertically padded. Vertical, and let's see, do 10.0. Let's see what that looks like. That's a bit better. Okay, let's make it 15.0 and change the color of all of the icons. Cool. So there's this thing called theming in Flutter, which I looked at but didn't really go into earlier. So inside the theme data, you can basically put an overarching color scheme or sort of styling system for your whole app. In this case, we're worrying about the icon theme. So if we change the icon theme to icon theme data and provide colors dot, what color should it be? Let's make them blue-gray. And save this. Hopefully it works. We have this. Oh, I just realized the first widget should be home. Okay, let's change that. As home. Awesome. Cool. So that looks nice, but the middle one still needs a blue border. Let's change that. So as you can see, the gesture detector has child icon, and it's pretty boring. So let's wrap this inside a container. Alt-L. Make sure you control Alt-L every so often. It just makes the code look a bit nicer. And inside the container, we can provide a decoration. Box decoration, and let's say color is colors.blue. Border radius is border radius dot circular and 10.0. And we don't need anything else. So I say this, but it's gonna look terrible because we've got blue on gray, which doesn't look great. So what happens if we make the icon white? So we can provide a color value here, colors.white. Like this, there we go. That's a bit better, but needs a bit of padding. Padding, edge, insets, full, and let's say 10.0. Might be a bit too big. Oh, nice. There we go. And as you can tell, that's looking very similar to what the designer gave us, theoretically. But does it actually function? Does it do anything? It does. Because as you can tell, it's just adding and removing n. So it's increasing or decreasing the number of elements there are in the list. You can do so much with Flutter. And it's pretty awesome to see that I've managed to do this in like 30 minutes around, even less than that. But yeah, so I think that's all for the presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me through any of these platforms and drop your questions in the chat. If you want to find out more about Flutter, visit flutter.dev. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karthik. That was really, really interesting. And yeah, definitely, guys, if you have any more questions related to Flutter, you can just pop them in the chat, and or you can contact on any of these platforms. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let me see. I'll start sharing my screen again here. There we go. So I'm not muted, am I, this time? Can you still hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So we just have a little bit of housekeeping for the last 5 minutes. Just a reminder, guys, to sign up to the mailing list or the chapter, just to make sure that you're getting notified each time the events are going live, and if there's any updates within the chapter as well. And then obviously as well, feedback is really, really valuable to us. So if you want to scan this QR code or take a picture of it and literally take 2 minutes, even if that, of your time, just to tell us what you liked about this session, any changes you want, just to make sure that you guys are getting the most out of each event. So I'll leave that on the screen for another 5 seconds if you just want to take a picture of it.
Rose, sorry, I just want to pop in here. Someone has asked a question for Karthik. The question is, what would you say is Flutter's best feature?
When people first approach Flutter, I'd say everyone's really excited about this concept called hot reload, which basically means that you don't need to rebuild the entire app each time you want to test something. You can just save it, and you can see the changes that you've made instantly. But personally, my favorite feature is that it works on all platforms without changing any code. So it basically means that I'm an Android developer, web developer, Windows and Mac developer, and everything. I don't need to learn a new language or anything. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you for that. I need to, you can't still hear me, that's okay. So yeah, this is just our next event that is coming up. It's going to be based on the Google developer technology that is TensorFlow, which is basically just like an end-to-end open source platform for machine learning. So if you're interested in machine learning or finding out any more about that, definitely keep an eye on our social medias and on your inbox, just so you're notified when that event is happening. And just before we finish, something that's actually quite exciting is the Developer Student Club Solution Challenge. So basically each year, Google challenges developer student clubs around the world to solve a problem for their local community using the Google developer technologies that they've been taught throughout the year. At the minute, I don't think we know the problem. It isn't being released until the 12th of January, but when we do know that, that'll be all over our social medias, and you guys can definitely get involved. I was reading the terms and conditions, and you can pick your own teams. I don't really think that there is a maximum on how many can be in a team, but you can only have one entry at a time, so you can't be in 2 teams. But I'm just going to play this video to give you guys a little bit more context. So yeah, if that is something that you guys would be interested in, you can search it up on Google at the minute. I'm pretty sure if you put in like DSC Solutions Challenge, it should take you to the homepage, and you can see the presentations from last year and just learn a little bit more about this. This is not letting me come out of full screen for some reason. There we go, and I've now stopped sharing my screen as well. There we go. So yeah, the last slide is, there we go. That is the last slide. So that is the session done for today, guys. Thank you all so much for joining. And again, a massive thank you to Karthik for such a really, really interesting and informative session. Guys, do you have anything else that you want to add?
I'm good. Just again, thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Karthik. It was a great session. It was very interesting. We get you excited to learn some Flutter. Yeah, thank you very much for turning out, and all the best.
Guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.